Hello, welcome or welcome back to Sapling Tarot. My name is Imogen. Today we're doing a very low-key video, but one that I really wanted to get filmed and uploaded as soon as I could. This is inspired by a video by Benta the Norse Witch, talking about fail tales, or the things in our practices that we're maybe not so good at, in an effort to really highlight some of the realism of what it's like to have practice and kind of the humanity of all of us, and the fact that we all have strengths and weaknesses and things that we enjoy and things that we find like just really annoying, things that we avoid, all of that kind of stuff. And I filmed a video a little while ago about tarot and shame, which covered some of these things. It was in part inspired by a video that Isha the activist witch did about feeling shame around witchcraft, and then also a kind of tarot confessions video by Kelly Bear. So I've got all the inspiration going on today. I'm having a bit of a time, so I'm doing like podcast style chatting to you rather than trying to like film it all in one, like in one piece. So the B-roll I have playing for you is me dismantling my Leo season eyeshadow palette that you might have seen on my Instagram, and building a colour palette to use for Virgo season. Bit of a random thing to show you, but I had fun with it. So, because I'm having a bit of a time, I'm a little bit worried I'm going to get a little bit down in the dumps with this. I'm going to try and keep it light. So, we'll start off with a smaller thing that I'm a bit shit at. I'm going to like start with sort of tarot-y things, and then we'll probably veer off into kind of more like spiritual witchcrafty stuff towards the end. This is primarily a tarot channel, but I kind of find it hard to figure out where one thing starts and the other thing ends. So, yeah. Cool. A smaller thing is like I have weirdly like shaky hands. And so I'm a shit shuffler. We've talked about this before. I also don't have very strong hands, so in terms of like riffle shuffling and things, like I don't. I'm a messy shuffler. I end up throwing cards everywhere. I'm always dropping stuff. It's really embarrassing, like in a professional setting, when I just wish that I could be one of these like super elegant card slingers with like the beautiful hands and, you know, kind of making the cards just kind of glide over each other. I'm not that. I'm a little bit more kind of messy and rough and ready. It's like a little bit of an insecurity, I guess, but also like it's just not that deep. So that is, yeah, I'm a tarot reader who's a shit shuffler. A bigger thing that is like, I suppose, like a slightly more like emotive thing is my memory. I've had like a history of like mental illness and all sorts of stuff, and brain fog and all of this kind of stuff, so it means that my memory is like patchy at best, and it can be genuinely a bit distressing. I try and find it funny, but it can like bring up some feelings. So particularly if I'm just reading for myself at home, I'm always checking notes and books, and sometimes even Google, particularly if I'm using a newer deck or a system that I'm less familiar with. I am always like checking my workings. I have this huge fear that one day I'll be like doing an event or doing like IRL readings, and all of my tarot knowledge will just drop out of my head, like leak out of my ear onto the floor, and I won't be able to like pull it together. I think I talked in the previous video about how like the way that I manage that fear is by doing the scary thing and by keeping my hands in and keeping going to events and stuff, and the practice of once you start kind of the patter of explaining the cards to someone and pointing out the details and the imagery, and I have like a checklist of things to go through, so like pointing out the pictures, you get into the numerology, elemental correspondences, and if they're so inclined, get into the astrology of it, and kind of bring it into things that they can connect with, and like connect the cards to each other. And then so all of those things are like on the cards, right, usually, and so once you've kind of got into the swing of talking about those sorts of things and linking them together, then often, in my experience, things just start to kind of nicely weave themselves together. And all of the other like tarot knowledge that I've had from like, oh geez, so many years now, like it kind of starts coming back into focus, and the panic subsides a little bit. On that note of like holding stuff in my brain, I saw the Polish folk witch, his video about this, and she was talking about holding astrology in her brain, and oh my god, yes, people who can just kind of riff on astrology, I have like so much admiration for that like ability to recall. I've been studying astrology on and off for, I mean, probably like the best part of 10 years, and I need like a quiet room and all of my notes from the last 10 years, all of my books, laptop, all of that kind of stuff, and even then I don't feel prepared to talk on astrology in any way other than kind of basically just like pop astrology, and just kind of, you know, cute little generalizations and whatever. But yeah, it just all escapes me when I try to like reach for it in conversation. So yeah, I try not to take it too seriously. I try to just be like, it's fine, you know, on the astrology thing, you know, I'm a big Gemini person, I'm a verbal processor. If I can start talking about something, usually my brain starts to catch up eventually. And so yeah, the other side of, you know, the maybe not having a great time with the mental health and stuff is like energy and motivation can be just really tough. And so like I love hearing about people's daily and weekly practices and seeing kind of beautiful layouts and just this kind of like, it's like gentle discipline thing. I don't, like, I'm so much more sporadic. I can go months without touching a tarot deck for like personal use. I like to make notes of like tarot challenges and stuff as and when I find ones that I think sound interesting, but I hold them very lightly. I try not to make it a thing, like a stick to hit myself with. I just use it as like prompts for if I feel like pulling out some cards and I don't have like a particular question or thing that I want to work through. Then I've like got all of these things in my tarot journal, like I used to do it with Tarot Tube and writing down like tarot tags and stuff in my journal just for my own use. And well, now here we are. now I do it and I post it online, so you're welcome. Yeah, so like the same sort of thing around like making things pretty. I've shown my journals before and stuff, like I try, you know, I have like a couple of pages a month I like try and make look nice or match colours and stuff because that makes me happy, but largely like my tarot journal is just pencil scrawlings all over the place. There's no real rhyme or reason to it. there's no kind of set amount of words. It can just be like almost like shorthand or keywords or full long form paragraphs. Like it can get so messy. Okay, I got interrupted, so I don't know where I was, but I'm pretty sure I was talking about having fuck all energy and so just having to really streamline everything and just kind of be okay with being this like slapdash, sporadic, rough and ready tarot reader, witch, spiritual person, whatever. And then the next thing is like reading big books. And this is a really hard one for me to admit because I, as a child, was like a reader TM. It was like my most defining feature, probably. It was like how people identified me, I guess. And I grew up, I went to school, I was a reader all the way through until like my GCSEs. And then, so probably around the age of like 15, 16, it all just sort of started like falling apart. My mental health like went down the pan, and I mean GCSE English, like if anyone can maintain a love of reading through GCSE English, I mean hats off. And so like I didn't really get back into reading properly for like a good 10 years. It ruined me, it absolutely ruined me, which I don't know if you have similar lived experience, if you know the like previously gifted child or whatever, like my identity and like sense of self and self-worth took an absolute battering from being not able to like read the way that I used to anymore. And so I've been like back into reading fiction. I suppose fiction was the main thing that took hit. I've always been like a non-fiction sort of really, really intense like research person for like periods of time. But yeah, it took me a long time to get back into reading fiction. And the thing that really changed it for me was ebooks. And so as much as I love having books, and I do tend to buy like non-fiction reference books, particularly if they've got like art, colour plates in them or whatever, I've had to learn that smaller books, ebooks are absolutely the way forward. They're not as pretty, they're not, you know, you don't get to have like the nice collection or whatever, but if I want to actually read a book, more than just like flick through every once in a while, like I need to have it in an ebook format, and I've just had to accept that. I also did really well with audiobooks for a while. I don't really listen to them so much anymore. I'm very much team listening to an audiobook is the same as reading a book. My like autistic, very literal brain does stumble over that in terms of the semantics of it, but like listening to a book is just as good as reading it. Fight me. But I don't know, there's something like I haven't like listened to podcasts for I used to do like audiobooks and podcasts and stuff when I was commuting on buses and stuff, so or travelling on buses and stuff and trains more, but since 2020 I haven't been doing that so much, so I'm more into reading ebooks, and I've just had to accept that. And they're cheaper, they're easier to access, you know, it's great. I'm very glad to have the ability to read ebooks, even if it doesn't scratch the same kind of, I don't know, whimsical itch that having a physical book does. Because again, it's this like these barriers to entry kind of things. So like I don't need to find the book, I don't need to move anything to get the book, I don't need to like physically hold the book. It's it sounds really silly when you break it down like that, but I figured it out for myself, and so ebooks are the way for me. And so like in terms of tarot books and things, I've just had to be okay with just taking things in chunks. So like I've been reading the Red Tarot by Christopher Marmolejo, and 78 Acts for Liberation by Lane Smith, and I've just been like dipping in and out, and so it's not very satisfying. I can't be like, oh, I've read that book, because it'll take me forever. I'm also reading The New Moon Magic by Risa Dickens and Amy Torok, and I'm just doing that like a month at a time. Again, not very satisfying, particularly. I can't be like, oh yeah, I've read that book, it was great or bad or indifferent or whatever. But I am also just enjoying my little routine of reading a chapter of it every month. So yeah, and I don't even have to stick to the new moon, which is my next point around the energy and the motivation, like staying on top of where the moon is. I love it. I have the apps. It makes me very happy when I can see the moon and know what the moon is doing, but I don't tend to keep my practice rigidly aligned with, anything. I read tarot when I want to read tarot. I do magic when I want to do magic. I read books when I want to read them. Like, I don't impose unnecessary limitations on myself. Like, I have sufficient limitations anyway. So I like knowing astrological days and timings, and where the moon is and where the sun is and where the planets are and all that kind of stuff, and they can be useful as prompts, but I don't restrict myself to them, because if I did, I would never get anything done ever. So another thing that I struggle with is, I suppose because of like sensory issues, and also the fact that I live in a small space, I live and work and do everything like all in the same room, and keep all of my shit in the same room and all of this stuff, so I'm very limited in terms of space, and also for like burning things and smoke and noise, so I don't burn incense particularly anymore. I'm very I can't say mindful now without it making me laugh. I'm very considered, I suppose, about when I do kind of like fire-based workings or burning anything, and I don't use like music or sound as much as I have done in the past. Like, I have that very self-censoring, self-surveilling thing where like just making a noise even in a room on my own, so like trying to hum or sing or anything by myself, like I get super self-conscious even if there's no one around, or like because it just feels like there always is someone around. The fact that I've done like nearly a year's worth of YouTube videos is a fucking miracle, quite frankly. I don't know what's shifted that means that I can talk into an empty room. But I'm pleased with it. It's great. So that kind of, those sorts of like sensory things. And like I need things like smells to be able to like disappear when I need them to disappear. Because otherwise I can all get a bit overwhelmed, and also like I get migraines, and so I just really don't need to be triggering anything like that if I can help it. And so kind of like the more like witchy stuff, I suppose we've kind of already gone on to the witchy stuff, but it's like I only have like a small, well, is it small? I don't know. I don't have like an extensive apothec of ingredients and stuff. Like most of my things are either from the garden or from like supermarket herbs. I like beeswax candles. Like I have like a small collection of things, and I have limited space. And saying that is like massively hypocritical, because I did end up becoming a tarot deck collector, and so if I can store those, I could probably store other things. But I work with what I have, I guess. Like I don't have elaborate anything really. The most elaborate things is like I do have some beautiful tarot decks, but in terms of like magical workings and stuff, again, it's this kind of like rough and ready, slapdash, thrown together kind of thing. And I work a lot with like, I suppose, kind of my own correspondences with things and like the stuff that makes sense to me. I'm not great at like being told what to do. So that can be a bit limiting in terms of trying out like different sorts of forms of spell work and spellcraft and stuff. Speaking of which, Ari the Oak Witch's book, Spellcraft and Spellwork, so good. I know Benta did a review recently. Ivy mentioned it on her channel, and Isha suitably raved about it on their channel. But you know, just throwing my voice in there. It's a bloody great book. And like the way that it was written in like not a you should be doing this, but just in a here are the options available to you kind of way, has been so useful for me, like trying new stuff. But yeah, generally I work with what I have and like what I'm, I don't know, inclined towards. I suppose I'm not like super experimental. I don't know. I am like mentally, but not physically with the stuff that I use, because I suppose kind of along the lines of ain't broke, don't fix it kind of thing. So yeah, so that's my kind of witchy things. Is like, yeah, I suppose I stick with what I know a little bit, and I would like to branch out more. We'll see what this September brings. I can feel a big research project brewing, but it was like I had the idea for it and then some shit happened and I'm like, is that... Anyway, okay, so also the final thing that I just wanted to touch on is like that like internal struggle of the sort of imposter syndrome, cynicism, skepticism mess of like, what am I doing? Is tarot real? Is magic real? What are we working with? Why does it work? Why do I collect these things? And like, I feel like that's the eternal struggle for a lot of people. Or maybe it's not. Maybe people don't doubt themselves. I mean, couldn't be me. Do not relate. But yeah, I thought it was important, you know, to talk about the things that we struggle with, particularly because like so many of these things come down to things like neurodivergence and disability and, you know, fucking housing and financial resources and all of these things. That's like, none of these things are like our fault, but it's like you work with the limitations that you have, and it's important to like not feel shamey and bad about these things. So thank you for listening to me waffle on, and for, you know, if you were watching the eyeshadow things going on screen, then yeah, let me know what you think. I'd love to hear about the things that you struggle with, what you think of the things that I struggle with. Be kind, please. But yeah, if you enjoyed this, you could give it a like. You could even consider subscribing. I hope you're taking really good care of yourself, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye.